my base of information from Michael, and who I have had the pleasure of working with for a number of years now as the leading voice in the trade for Drawback. And you know, he did a great job of setting up the basis for what Drawback is. And so now we'll take you through what you need to kind of determine how to go about getting that Drawback. So just getting the opportunity and making sure that you have exports, obviously, or you're connected to somebody in the supply chain. But how do we quantify that opportunity? So Drawback being very technical and detail-oriented, we just want to start with some basic information. We don't want to get too complicated too quickly. So we want to really figure out how do we quantify how much is paid in import duty, kind of a quick way to start. And I'm determining the scope based on that. Do I have enough in import duties paid where it may be worthwhile to pursue, given what we need to do to take care of that? So that's an important first question to ask. Going back to the countries that where the merchandise comes from and where I'm exporting to, both of those will determine my opportunity and what type of drawback, as Michael mentioned before, that I'm going to pursue. You know, with exports to NAFTA destinations, there are some limitations on the types of drawback that we can go after. We then determine what the percentages of our imports that are ultimately exported or used in an exported product. So of our export sales, we'll get into a couple of examples here in a minute that speak to that specifically, and we can see exactly what we're looking for as far as our opportunity is concerned. Is there manufacturing or production taking place in the United States? So what customs deems as a manufacturing operation may be different from what you deem that to be. An unused operation would still be something like testing or blending, so there are different things that you can do and have your merchandise still be considered unused merchandise. But it really will determine from customs perspective, if you have a manufacturing operation, that does change the requirements and what you need to provide for a drawback claim. And another question that we ask every time you hear the word export, you can kind of replace that also with destroy. Do I have destruction processes here in the United States where I've got imported duty-paid merchandise that's then being destroyed? So I can claim drawback on that as well, given I have the right documentation to take care of that situation. So I've asked some of my basic questions, and now I want to get into how do I quantify my potential. I have a unit of measure example, or unused merchandise example here, where we have import and duties and taxes paid at $500,000 a year, but then of our sales, half of that is exported out. So of the $500,000 a year, I've got half of my sales are exports. I do a quick calculation to get to my quick and dirty drawback potential of $250,000 a year. Okay, so very simple. All right, yes, I have 6 figures on the table, certainly worthwhile to pursue the program. So now I need to take that into the next step. But say I have manufacturing, what do I need for that? So we look at the imports of your raw material or raw materials, and in this example we have $200,000 a year in duty and taxes, and we have that a manufacturing process or several different manufacturing processes using those raw materials where you have imports with duty paid, and where we have the finished article and we have the raw material that's been used to create whatever that finished article is. So let's say in this case 25% of our raw material is used in the manufacture of that article. So in this case we have a drawback potential of $50,000 a year, taking our $200,000 in duties and taxes and multiplying it by that percentage of the raw material used in the manufacture of the final article. So again, very simple examples based on our introductory questions as to what can be claimed for drawback. So given that, in both cases, we decide that we want to pursue our drawback opportunity. And in doing so, we have to then collect our data elements. So as Michael asked before, or Michael mentioned before, what are you going to need as far as the data collection? And so we just listed the main categories here. These are some of the elements that you're going to need to get started. There is a lot of data that's involved, more so now that Drawback has transitioned to ACE. The ACE data, certainly for you or for your clients or your customers, is a good place to start, to supplement with the data for the claimant, as well as some broker data to help fill in the gaps. But we really need to understand everything that as you present these data fields that will go into the drawback claim that CBP sees. So on the import side, you're going to have different elements like filer code, entry number, harmonized number, unit of measure. There are new fields in ACE. There's an import tracking identification number, an enter goods value per unit, substituted value per unit. All of these things need to be provided in a transmission. So that information, some of that information comes from invoices, some of it comes from purchase orders. You have screenshots of your inventory. You have an entry summary packet that can collect a lot of that information for you. And some of that information is calculated for ACE either by your broker or by yourself as you're doing drawback. When it comes to the bill of material or bills of material in certain situations, you have to provide this set of elements that were not previously required to be transmitted with a drawback claim. And now that it's electronic, all of those data elements for the bill of material go in automatically. And it is, you have some of the data to support the new fields here, like you have a manufacturer tracking identification number that Customs has put into the program to connect to the import and the export to make sure that everything is tied together for that finished manufactured article. So there's different pieces that you need here. We're talking through an acquisition value, which is a little bit different from what has been required before, but still more to come with that. And then again, the harmonized number for the imported or substituted items based on the new law. So a lot going on with the bill of material. Then on the export data, we need to show the date in fact of exportation. That's the main piece in the regulations that we have to adhere to. And so there are certain data fields that will allow for that to be proven out. The export or destroy date. You have your country of destination, the name of the exporter, destroyer, being the claimant, the harmonized number, article description, text, etc. So you have different pieces where that will come from. That will come from a bill of lading, master bill of lading, a B3 if you're exporting to Canada, a pedimento if you're exporting to Mexico. So different fields come from different sets of documents, but you will need these data elements just from a very basic starting point in order to file your claim in ACE. There are other elements on the export side in particular, like a bill of lading indicator or carrier code. Those things are optional right now, but we hope that one day by providing them, they will tie back to a manifest in the system that will show that date in fact of exportation and will ease the burden a little bit on the drawback claimant as to what is required. So these are the data elements really that we need to start here. We have some that we've incorporated here from the current core drawback law, and some have been added with the transition to ACE. So Michael has talked through kind of what has changed in drawback just from a very high level on the drawback timeline, and the drawback simplification effort for the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. Michael was involved in that from the beginning. I came in a little bit later along from an associate who started before me within our company in kind of walking through this legislation through time. It was finalized and signed by President Obama on February 24th, 2016, which kicked off a timeline for when the regulation should be written. So we have 2 years from that date for when regulation should be finalized, but I'll get to that more in a minute. There is a 1-year transition for companies to file core drawback or TIFTIA drawback, and we're in that transition point right now. As of February 24th, 2019, we will be in a TIFTIA-only drawback world. That's the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. So as of February of 2019, the core drawback elements and law and regulation go away. So not only is that going on, but in the background, also drawback decides that now is the time to transition to the automated commercial environment. We, Michael and I, along with a number of others from the trade, were involved in a working group with CBP in trying to ease the transition to the ACE environment. And it is a complicated one. As I mentioned, drawback is very technical. There is a lot that needs to be and needed to be discussed from a validation standpoint to just making sure that everything would work the way that it's intended to, and it's still something that is a work in progress. But it is now fully automated as of February 24th of 2018, and so as the claim goes in and is accepted, that claim is live in ACE. And we have the Drawback CATER, which is the Customs and Trade Automated Interface Requirements, and that is essentially the programming guide for your drawback claims in ACE. So that is kind of the main Bible for what you're looking for when it comes to the CATER.